VCY America presents Crosstalk, a nationwide call-in program discussing issues that have an effect on our families, our communities, our churches, our nation, and our world. Crosstalk, an opportunity for you to voice your concerns for biblical principles. And now live by satellite and around the world on the internet at vcyamerica.org. Here is today's Crosstalk.
And thank you for joining us today here on Crosstalk on the VCY America Network. Well, today is day number 3 of the hearings going on before the United States Supreme Court. As arguments going on in the court here today, a session that was held this morning, and one that should just be completing at this very time before the court as they deal with whether or not the expansion of Medicaid is unconstitutional. Yesterday, looking, of course, or this morning rather, if the mandate is found to be unconstitutional, is it severable? Meaning, will the rest of the law survive? We wholeheartedly encourage you, VCY America Crosstalk listeners, to be praying for the justices on the United States Supreme Court. As Matt Staver, attorney with Liberty Counsel, told us last week, the justices are planning to convene at the end of this week to cast their decisions pertaining to the issues that they heard, and then they will, in essence, go into, in some form, sequester themselves to start writing the opinions, the majority opinion or the dissenting opinions, and that will be happening over the many weeks to come. Anticipated that we will be hearing the decision from the United States Supreme Court by the end of June, at the end of this current term. So be praying for the justices. Transcripts from the Supreme Court's ongoing oral arguments over the health care law show a very sharply divided court that some analysts say could mean the controversial law is in grave danger. Well, at the heart of the controversy is the law's mandate forcing Americans to purchase health insurance, which opponents have said goes beyond the scope of Congress's power, and which many believe could unravel the entire law should it be struck down, reports LifeSiteNews.com. The law is being challenged by the Attorney Generals of 26 United States and also the National Federation of Independent Business. Following 2 hours of oral arguments before the Supreme Court yesterday, Newsmax reports here today that CNN legal analyst Jeffrey Toobin declared, quote, "This was a train wreck for the Obama administration. This law looks like it's going to be struck down." Toobin was the author of The Nine, Inside the Secret World of the Supreme Court, said he was forced to reverse his earlier prediction on the case based on the poor performance of the U.S. Solicitor General Donald Verrilli. He said he was nervous. He was not well spoken. The argument got off to a very bad start for the administration, and it was really the liberal justices who carried the argument much more than the lawyer. Toobin acknowledged that the best hope of the Obama administration was that 4 liberal justices of the court would be joined by Chief Justice John Roberts Jr. in upholding the Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act. There have been those who have suggested that Chief Justice Roberts was perhaps waffling on this issue, not knowing where he's going to come down. Others believe that through his questions that he will come down in opposition to the Affordable Health Care Act. He also said in regard to Justice Kennedy here, he says, I think he's a lost cause after listening to his comments. He said that it does not appear that Justice Kennedy is going to uphold the constitutionality of Obamacare. Well, Court Justice Elena Kagen did show up, of course, to hear the arguments, gave no indication that she would recuse herself. Even though she had cheered, and this is from CNSNews.com, she had cheered enactment of Obamacare as an Obama political appointee and had personally assigned her top deputy in the Obama Justice Department to defend the law in federal court. Internal Department of Justice documents secured by CNSNews.com through the Freedom of Information Act demonstrate that when Kagan was Obama's Solicitor General charged with defending his administration's positions in federal court disputes, that she personally assigned her top deputy to handle the anticipated legal challenges to Obamacare. Very interesting there. Also, as Liberty Counsel pointed out, that the original document, the original law, the Affordable Health Care Act, the framework for Obamacare, was 2,471 pages. Okay, that's how long the framework was. That's 425,116 words. That was a law that was passed by Congress, contained only the framework, though, for Obamacare. The mandates and the HHS guidelines that are now emerging were still unwritten, with wide discretion that is given to unelected Washington bureaucrats, he said. Since then, according to Fox Nation, they calculate that Obamacare regulations now contain, now keep in mind it was 425,116 words, but now contain 2,163,744 words. And just how long is that? 2.16 million words? Well, by someone counting the words in the King James Version of the Bible, the King James Version of the Bible is 830,000 words. This is 2.16 million words. That makes Obamacare regulations so far 2.5 times as long as the Bible. If you add the text of the Obamacare statutes to its regulations, they are together 3 times as long as the Bible. That's what we're facing now, but the new HHS rules are being issued almost daily from Kathleen Sebelius and other implementers. Over 700 new directives so far without any congressional oversight, without any congressional accountability. Newsmax.com is reporting that former Senator Arlen Specter, who played a key role in the passage of President Obama's health care reform legislation, confirmed to Newsmax TV that the senator considered, listen to this, considered Governor Mitt Romney's health care reform in Massachusetts as solid precedent for Obamacare. Very interesting. Well, by the way, this is our news roundup here today on Crosstalk. As there's been so much going on, we'll give you opportunity to comment on these or other current event stories. So be listening to the things we're sharing with you today. You may want to have a comment here as it relates to the healthcare matter. But another interesting story that has come out here this week is pertaining to the President Obama, Monday in Seoul, South Korea, thought he was speaking to the Russian President Medvedev privately when live microphones caught his remarks ahead of a summit meeting on nuclear security. On all these issues, but particularly missile defense, this can be solved, but it's important for him, referring to Putin, to give me space, Obama said. This is my last election. After my election, I have more flexibility. Does that concern you? Here he is thinking his microphone is turned off, talking to the Russian president, saying that he needs some space. This is his last election. After my election, I have more flexibility. To that, the Russian president replied, I understand. I will transmit this information to Vladimir. Well, the president now has attempted to clarify his remarks, saying he is not hiding the ball on his goal to reduce nuclear stockpiles. But CNS News asked Congressman Issa if President Obama owes a better explanation of his remarks and if Congress should be looking into it. And so House Oversight and Government Reform Chairman Darrell Issa said that the American people should be very afraid after hearing President Obama's accidentally recorded remarks to the Russian president after the election, saying he would have more flexibility in dealing with the Russians. Let's hear what CNS News reports in that conversation. Here's the report.
Congressman, can I ask you about the president's remarks to the Russian president yesterday? Does he mean that he's going to be making concessions to the Russians after the election?
Clearly, the president has a plan to do after the election what he can't or won't do before the election, and he's going to do it without ever being honest with the American people. I think that's clear. Now, how much of a sellout of America's security? Putin certainly is not on our side, doesn't want what we want, is certainly proven to be a new generation dictator of Russia. So when he sends to the president, who's about to leave office in favor of Putin coming back in and taking over officially, that we can work together to get what Putin wants, quite candidly, the American people should be very afraid that any president who's going to be flexible with Putin is going to be flexible with an enemy of America, an enemy of the West, an enemy of even delivery of oil and natural gas to people in need in the winter. Understand it's been the Putin's administration that has cut off the flow of natural gas in the winter to Eastern Europeans if they didn't play ball with them. So that's the person that he's, quote, going to be flexible with after the election.
And should he give a better explanation of those remarks to the American people, and should Congress be looking into those remarks and what concessions he might be making? Or?
Well, a free press should be asking the questions and trying to get answers, and if they can't get answers as to what this really meant, and an honest answer and a full answer of the kind of disclosure that would occur afterwards, then quite candidly the voters will have to decide. I personally don't think that the statements like that of a president are the subject of my committee. I won't be following up on it. I think that they're available for the press to ask and for the American people to judge. I, as an American citizen, was already not voting for the president. But I judge that, in fact, he's going to sell out our national defense after the election or something along that line, because I know Putin to be a man who, unlike what George W. Bush said, you cannot see into his soul or his heart. He has been a really awful person for countries around him and for America. And right now, he and the Chinese are standing with Bashar Assad as people in Syria are being murdered.
That was Congressman Darrell Issa of California, and relating to the remarks that President Obama made when he thought he was off mic on all these issues, but particularly missile defense. This can be solved, but it's important to give me space, the president said. This is my last election. After my election, I have more flexibility. What do you think was meant by that? Interesting statement indeed. But it's also interesting as it relates to matters going on in the Middle East that the president basically said, hey, all this thing with the established a Palestinian state, all that's off the table now till after the election. One can only wonder what is in the plans of Barack Obama should he take another term as president for the United States. Someone asked the question, if all the things that are so blatantly going on today, knowing that the president faces re-election, what will this nation face in the future? Well, while we're on this topic of Russia, interesting story on WND.com. While many U.S. mainstream media outlets are not dealing with the news about the Obama eligibility investigation, Russia's government radio is keeping the world abreast of the scandal that has caused the biggest censorship and blackout in the history of journalism. The Voice of Russia, successor of Radio Moscow, the official station of the Soviet Union, published an exclusive interview with Sheriff Joe Arpaio March 26, titled Obama's Birth Certificate May Be Forgery. WND reported that Russian news website Pravda published an accusation that the American media is tame, afraid to publish news, and is deliberately hiding the evidence published on the Internet about President Obama's defrauding of the American public and the deliberate evisceration of the Constitution of the United States. Very interesting. Well, this also from CNSNews.com. The Obama administration has requested $770 million in federal funds to combat the effects of global warming in developing nations. A new congressional report continues its policy of using foreign aid to combat the effects of global warming in the developing world. The figure from a recent report from the Congressional Research Service shows that despite another year of $1 trillion deficits, the Obama administration continues to pursue its policy of using foreign aid funds for anti-global warming measures known as the Global Climate Change Initiative. And, wow, that would bring a total to $3.3 billion if that money is approved. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back. You're listening to Crosstalk.
Back to Genesis with Dr. John Morris, scientist with the Institute for Creation Research. Dr. Morris, I heard about a program on flying snakes. Is this true?
Yes, it is, Chris. Some snakes do have the ability to glide from tree to tree, much like a flying squirrel. As they soar, they flatten out their body to double its width and half its thickness. It can make mid-air corrections and avoid trees and land safely. This takes not only the muscles to do so, but the appropriate brain control as well. Seems to me this is a problem for evolution. Now, we can study the abilities that the snake has today, but where did it get the genes to do so? Now, we find flight or pseudo-flight among the fish and the reptiles and the insects and the birds and the mammals. The origin of flight seems impossible for evolution even once, but to do it several times? Cut me some slack. Chris, once again, the facts fit the Back to Genesis truth, but not evolution.
Thanks, Dr. Morris. Back to Genesis is a production of the Institute for Creation Research.
We're having a news roundup day here today on Crosstalk as we look toward the remaining part of this week. Tomorrow we have scheduled with us a member of HSLDA who is, a very interesting case about a child, a newborn baby, taken from its mother by social services. Threats, all kinds of things going on as a result of a mother refusing to have the child vaccinated without having some tests done first. You'll be hearing that more tomorrow, as well as about parentalrights.org and even the threat on the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child and related issues. And trust you'll be able to join us for that program. Well, in this news roundup here today, another release came from Liberty Counsel that they and nearly 70 organizations have signed a letter of support for Representative Jeff Landry's bill to defund unconstitutionally appointed bureaucrats. The bill is H.R. 3770, the Executive Appointments Reform Act. And Senator Jim DeMint has been willing to stand up against President Obama's unconstitutional appointments by refusing to vote for any of his nominees unless or until those unconstitutionally appointed are removed from Congress. The majority of Congress has failed to act to ensure the Constitution is respected and obeyed. This bill, this H.R. 3770, would result in the defunding of the salaries of individuals who are unconstitutionally appointed by the president. Representative Landry's bill currently has 52 sponsors on it. Again, that's H.R. 3770. WND reporting that the birthplace of the American Military's Reserve Officers Training Corps, ROTC program, is now the birthplace of the first known gay pride events, such as the planned Condom Olympics and Queer Prom on a U.S. military campus. Norwich University in Northfield, Vermont, founded in 1819 as the first private military academy in the United States, is in the middle this week of 6 days of events hosted by the university's Lesbian, Gay, Bisexual, Transgender, Question, and Allies Club. According to a university press release, 6 days of events are scheduled, 1 day for each color of the LGBT community's rainbow flag, with each color representing an LGBT issue or theme, such as red for AIDS awareness, green for allies of gay students, and on and on. The events will culminate with the Queer Prom this Saturday, March 31st, where Army Chief Warrant Officer Charlie Morgan and Vermont Governor Peter Shumlin will be speaking. Well, it didn't take long after the repeal of Don't Ask, Don't Tell, did it? The Obama administration, this is from CNSNews.com, has declared this to be LGBT Health Awareness Week, a time to focus. Every month seems to have another LGBT week, doesn't it? Coming out and month here in October, and Gay Pride in June, and transgender this and all these things. Well, this has now been declared LGBT Health Awareness Week, a time to focus on the unique health needs of lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender Americans. Okay, the health needs. But the 5-paragraph announcement that was released by the Department of Health and Human Services on Monday, no mention of HIV/AIDS, a disease that disproportionately affects the LGBT community. This is about health, and no mention of this in the 5-paragraph release from the HHS department. Some of the ways that HHS is planning to improve the health and well-being of LGBT people, well, they plan to increase the number of federally funded health and demographic surveys that collect data on sexual orientation and gender identity. And they're going to address discrimination, harassment, and violence against all individuals, including LGBT individuals, through domestic violence and other violence prevention programs, including recognizing LGBT populations as underserved communities in grant announcements. HHS will boost its focus on LGBT youth and all anti-bullying initiatives and make sure that states, schools, and the general public are aware of the resources available. For too long, LGBT people have been denied the compassionate services they deserve, HHS says. That is now changing. HHS continues to make significant progress toward protecting the rights of every American to access quality care, recognizing that diverse populations have distinctive needs. Very interesting from HHS as they have this LGBT Health Awareness Week. Well, have you seen the new Jimmy Carter Study Bible? Former President Jimmy Carter has been strongly identified. He identifies as a born-again Christian. But as a liberal Democrat for nearly 5 decades, he is once more blending those roles as he promotes his latest book, his own study Bible, reports LifeSiteNews.com. The NIV Lessons from Life Bible, Personal Reflections with Jimmy Carter, contains the full text of the New International Version of the Bible and the former president's prayers, reflections, and other thoughts. During his book tour to promote a study of the Scriptures, Carter mentioned he supports same-sex marriage. When pressed about whether he believed the Bible is God's Word, Carter answered, quote, "The basic principles of the Bible are taught by God, but written down by human beings deprived of modern-day knowledge. So there is some fallibility in the writings of the Bible, but the basic principles are applicable to my life, and I don't find any conflict among them." There are many verses in the Bible that you could interpret very rigidly, Carter says, and that makes you ultimately into a fundamentalist. Fundamentalists, he wrote in his 2005 book, Our Endangered Values, tend to demagogue emotional issues and are often angry and sometimes resort to verbal or even physical abuse against those who interfere with the implementation of their agenda. Well, in addition to the nuptial vows, Carter encouraged the military to end the Don't Ask, Don't Tell policy in 2007, and in 2010 he told the website Big Think that it was time to elect a gay person as president. Are you going to rush out and get the Jimmy Carter Study Bible? Well, the influence to young people here is being impacted again as Star Wars video game is now going to allow characters to have homosexual romances. BioWare, the company that has created the online video game Star Wars, The Old Republic, has relented after 2 years of lobbying and announced that it will create an upgrade, they call it upgrade, that allows players to have same-sex relationships as part of the gaming experience. David Caton of the Florida Family Association told LifeSite News the worst part about this, we have children who are 9, 10, 11, 12 years old that are playing these games. Starbucks, well, the officials see no impact of their decision to endorse same-sex marriage in the state of California. They're at their annual meeting, the stockholders, they haven't seen any reduction in sales, and their CEO, Howard Schultz, believes the decision is right for the company to support the same-sex marriage movement in Washington. He says, I believe it's defensible. Meanwhile, the National Organization for Marriage has announced a Dump Starbucks protest in response to the company's support of same-sex marriage. LifeNews.com is reporting that the House Judiciary Committee approved yesterday the Child Interstate Abortion Notification Act by a vote of 20 to 13. The measure is needed to ensure abortion facilities do not violate the parental notification laws of a girl's home state. Lawmakers support the bill, which would make it a federal crime to transport a minor across a state line to circumvent a state law requiring parental notification in the minor's abortion. The legislation is needed as sexual abusers, family members, and even staff at abortion centers routinely take teenage girls across state lines for secret abortions without their parents' knowledge or permission. Again, that's called the Child Interstate Abortion Notification Act. Passed committee yesterday, a vote of 20 to 13, which would move that on then to the full House. An article from the Orlando Sentinel tells about a TV crew filming a reality show at Miami International Airport. Went beyond shocked when U.S. Customs and Border Protections agents found 2 human fetuses in the luggage of 2 women returning home from Havana. The fetuses were to be delivered to someone in Miami and used in one of the mixed religions widely practiced in Cuba, such as Santeria. The head of the homicide squad, or a member of the homicide squad from Miami-Dade Police Department, said, I've never heard of anything like this. That was Pat Diaz. who had retired just a couple years back from Miami-Dade. The two women told U.S. authorities that they had received the jar in Havana, a Santeria priest, from a priest, and were asked to deliver it to someone in Miami in an airline industry official at MIA. But they insisted they did not know what was in the jar, and they were not charged with any crime. Oh, from Operation Rescue. On a tip from a local woman, the Kansas City Star has recovered over 1,000 abortion medical records from 2001 and 2002 that were illegally dumped in a public recycling bin by the discredited abortionist Krishna Rajana. The files contain names, addresses, and other sensitive information about abortion patients at the now closed Affordable Medical Center. The newspaper had since turned the documents over to the Kansas State Board of Healing Arts. The documents could be used as evidence in a possible criminal case. The law requires that medical records be maintained for 10 years, but some of these records discovered in the recycling bin were less than 10 years old. Incredibly, Operation Rescue says that Rajana defended his dumping the records as an attempt to be environmentally friendly. Well, PepsiCo is denying the fact that it uses aborted baby cells to test flavor enhancers by rejecting claims that it has a contract with any company that does such research. PepsiCo is telling concerned customers and pro-life advocates that it does not use cells from fetal kidney tissue for artificial flavor enhancers. Children of God for Life and One News Now, however, are pointing to evidence that shows otherwise. Debbie Venege, who heads the pro-life ministry and broke the story about an email in which PepsiCo denies its involvement in the practice despite the evidence, said that people are scrambling at Pepsi. I don't know who they have in their public relations department that's handling these kinds of things, but it looks like they're in a panic mode because everything they're saying can be refuted. She finds it odd, for instance, that the company denies having a relationship with Cenemex, the group, the firm that uses the aborted baby cell line to test flavor enhancers. She notes a well-publicized document released by PepsiCo that confirms the business relationship, and it was run in the Wall Street Journal and the Financial News, a $30 million sweetener deal, and so therefore is finding it very difficult to believe that PepsiCo denying this, and so they continue their public relations campaign to make people aware here about Pepsi's involvement there. The Kansas Family Policy Council saying that today the Kansas House of Representatives set to take action on two very important pieces of legislation that would protect Kansas religious liberties. The Kansas Religious Liberty Preservation Act stipulates that the state or local government cannot force residents of Kansas to act in ways that are contrary to their religious beliefs. And the Healthcare Conscience Protection Act, protections for healthcare workers that refuse to participate in prescription provisions or performance of abortion, medicine, or drugs that can cause abortion. The bill would extend protection to pro-life individuals in the medical field, especially in the OB/GYN field. If you need more information, Kansans, you can contact the Kansas Family Policy Council. And I believe it's kansasfpc.org. Their phone number 316-993-3900. That's 316-993-3900. Well, that's some of the news that's going on. By the way, also a national group of atheists and agnostics suing Pennsylvania lawmakers. Why? Because they declared 2012 as the year of the Bible, and Freedom from Religion Foundation just doesn't like that. Today, we'd like to take your comments on these stories. If you want to comment on what's going on in the presidential race right now, if you want to comment about the case before the U.S. Supreme Court, or if you want to weigh in on what the president meant about having more flexibility after the election, our number 800-733-9829. Our lines are open to comment on these or other current event stories. 800-733-9829. We'll be right back.
Are you on death row? One Christian film producer says everybody is. Every one of us will one day die. Then what? In a heart-stirring 30-minute DVD, film writer, producer, and director Dave Cristiano has released a penetrating on-stage drama that takes you inside a prison cell and captures the life of a man on death row who knows that in less than 3 hours he will die. Convicted of murder, he sits angry, guilty, and scared. At his request for a preacher, the two engage in a soul-searching conversation that is forever impacting. As an evangelistic tool, VCY America is making available Death Row, encouraging you to share with unsaved friends and loved ones. One copy is available for a donation of $8, or you can obtain a 4-pack of the Death Row DVDs for a donation of $20. This offer will expire at the end of March. To make your donation by phone, call 1-800-729-9829 and specify whether you want 1 or 4 Death Row DVDs. That's 1-800-729-9829.
A News Roundup Day here today on Crosstalk, and our lines are available for you if you'd like to comment on some of these stories here today or make a comment on other contemporary news-related issues, things that are going on. Our number 800-733-9829. If you have a comment here pertaining to the Supreme Court matter and they're hearing the challenge to the Affordable Health Care Act, perhaps you want to talk about the remarks that the president made about waiting until after the election till he has more flexibility, or the funding that we're giving. The president requesting $770 million to fight global warming overseas. Our number here to Crosstalk, 800-733-9829. That's 800-733-9829. Just before we go to the calls here today on Crosstalk, I do want to bring to your attention the fact that earlier this month, I believe it was, we had interviewed Dave Cristiano, a film writer and producer and director. He has put together this DVD called Death Row. We interviewed him pertaining to this, telling the story of a convicted murderer, a man named Benson, just sitting hours before his scheduled execution. He's an angry man, a guilty man, a scared man. He requests a preacher, and a man comes to visit. The two engage in a very soul-searching conversation. A penetrating drama takes you inside a prison cell and the life of a man on death row who knows that it's in less than 3 hours he is scheduled to die. Let's just hear a brief clip from Death Row.
Do you have any questions, Mr. Benson?
No.
Then why'd you ask to see a preacher?
Because I don't want to die. I don't know anybody on this earth who wants to die. No one knows what's on the other side of death. No one ever comes back and tells you what's on the other side of death. So I'm scared, all right?
I understand.
Oh, do you really?
Yes, sir.
No, you don't. Are you on death row?
As a matter of fact, I am.
Oh, so now you're really trying to be funny?
No, sir, I'm not.
Well, then how are you on death row?
Mr. Benson, you're scheduled to die in less than 3 hours. I'm scheduled to die sometime in the near future. I am 54 years old. How much longer do you think I have on this earth? 30 years? 40 years? It could only be 40 minutes. I don't know. But one thing I do know is that one day I am going to die. So just like you, I too am on death row. The only thing is, you have the disadvantage of knowing when you're going to die.
Well, that's a brief excerpt from Death Row, a powerful evangelistic DVD, and there have been many of these that have been requested by our Crosstalk listeners. I do bring it to your attention today because this is the final week that we are offering this here through VCY America. It's a 30-minute, again, it's an onstage presentation between these two characters. You see the man behind bars and the dialogue that happens. It's 30 minutes long. One copy of the DVD is available for a donation of $8. That includes shipping to you, but we've made 4 copies, working with the producer, 4 copies of Death Row available for a donation of just $20. It's to be used to distribute to those who don't know Christ as Savior, where you could have this gospel witness go into their home. And since this is the final week, we make mention of this again. And the telephone number and website, if you want to obtain this, you can go to vcyamerica.org. You can order it online or contact our switchboard here at 800-729-9829. That's 800-729-9829. Or to write to us at Crosstalk, 3434 West Kilbourne Avenue, Milwaukee, Wisconsin, 53208. And be sure to ask for Death Row. Again, one copy of the DVD is available for $8 or 4 copies for a donation of $20. The phone number, 800-729-9829. Well, it's a news roundup day, and let's go to the lines. Our number here is 800-733-9829. John, you're our first caller in West Milwaukee. Go ahead. You're on the air.
Hello, Jim. This health care bill that they're debating here, I bet they're going to have a jaundiced eye as far as what they use fetuses and body parts for unborn for Pepsi. How do they even get the idea? It's an abomination for some kind of a flavoring, sweetener, or whatever, an ingredient for a soda?
Yeah, again, it's not an ingredient in it, but it's used to test it's like a flavor enhancer, to test flavor enhancers. And it's been reported widely through groups like OneNewsNow.com, LifeSiteNews.com, I believe LifeNews.com as well, also reporting on that story.
Where do they get the idea to do this? It's just unbelievable.
Man's heart is deceitful and desperately wicked.
If we're not ready for a judgment, I don't know when.
Thank you for your thoughts here today, John. Next to Dawn in Milwaukee, you're on the air.
I have a question. Now, this is about President Obama speaking to the Russian president. If you are to, isn't it treason if you neutralize our country or say you're going to disarm our country so that another country would have power over us? Well, isn't that treason?
You know, I guess one would have to look at his words. He says we need to hold things off. I'll have more flexibility after the election. So what is meant by that? Well, the president is trying to give his take on it now after it's become public. But what was really going through his mind, I guess that's left to the ears of the beholder.
That's absolutely frightening that this country would not take a look at what he's saying and what he's done to topple other nations that are now our enemies that we were neutral with and have helped us in the Middle East in the past, and now he's toppling our nation.
Thanks for your thoughts here today, Dawn.
Thank you.
Our number, 800-733-9829. Folks, what are your thoughts? We're going next to Twin Falls, Idaho. Patty, you're on the air.
Yes. Several weeks ago on one of these calls, I said that Obama was an enemy of our country. I think it's becoming more and more clear, and I am appalled that Capitol Hill, Congress, fiddles while Rome burns, so to speak. They don't seem to do anything to oppose Obama, where they have the power to override some of his decisions, and yet they fiddle around doing other things, ineffective for our country. And I feel like we're going downhill rapidly, and it really scares me to try to look into the future, the way things have happened just since Obama's been in office.
The comfort, Patty, is that we don't know what the future holds, but we know who holds the future.
Amen to that, brother.
So our trust, our confidence is in God. He's sovereign in control. He never has to call an emergency session. And he knows totally what's going on, and his plan is going to go forward.
And nothing is a surprise to him.
Yeah. Thank you for your call here today. Mm-hmm. Bye-bye now. Our number, 800-733-9829. Have a couple open lines right now. Maybe you want to comment about Starbucks supporting same-sex marriage in the state of California. Does that impact you in any way? Or what about the Star Wars video game now introducing homosexual romances into their games that 9- and 10-year-olds are playing? 800-733-9829. John, you're our next caller in Minnesota. Go ahead. You're on the air. Hello, John.
Hello?
John, turn your radio off, please.
Yeah, I just turned it off, yes.
Okay, you're on the air.
Okay. Hello, Jim.
Go ahead, John.
Yeah, relative to this issue there of Obama there being not aware that he spoke there to the Russian president there, why wasn't this issue by Congress or somebody addressed directly to the president? Why didn't somebody challenge him on that?
Well,
I'm kind of curious. I enjoy your program immensely, by the way. I really enjoy it.
Well, I appreciate that. I mean, the time in which this was said was not during a press conference time, so it was not something somebody could point to him. But he has since been asked that at the White House, and he has, in essence, been saying that there is no. He clarified his remarks yesterday, saying he's not hiding the ball on his goal to reduce nuclear stockpiles. So that's what he's saying. It's always been my goal to reduce nuclear stockpiles. But what he meant on the day that he spoke this to the Russian president has got many bewildered and many wondering what he really meant by that, saying he's going to have more flexibility after this election.
Yeah, that's almost scary in a way.
Thanks for your call and your thoughts here today, John.
Very good. Thank you for your time.
Now. Today is an opportunity for you to make comment here on these issues or on current news events and issues going on. Of course, the race for the GOP nomination taking off again this week here. The focus now on the state of Wisconsin, which holds its primary this coming week, Tuesday. If you have comments on those issues, comments pertaining to the Supreme Court, any of these stories, current news and events, our number 800-733-9829. You'll be able to get right through to us here, 800-733-9829. Very interesting that House Oversight and Government Reform Chairman Darrell Issa said that American people should be very afraid after hearing President Barack Obama's accidentally recorded remarks to the Russian president Monday, that after the election he would have more flexibility in dealing with the Russians. He said, I judge that, in fact, that it's going to sell out our national defense after the election. That was Congressman Issa's personal thoughts in that regard. And so there are many who are weighing in on that issue. The president's being challenged on it as well. But what he meant by that, we don't know. Certainly we know as well regarding the Palestinian agreement here as well that as far as establishing a Palestinian state, he kind of put the brakes on that, saying, hey, we're going to wait until after the November election as well. Let's go to Donna calling from the state of Idaho. Donna, you're on the air.
Good morning. My question is, why wasn't the president's health plan fought on the grounds of the anti-establishment clause? Because what he's doing is forcing us to enter into his human sacrifice. Our tax money is paying for abortion. That's human sacrifice. That's sacrificing human beings to the god of convenient sex.
Which unfortunately the Supreme Court has said is legal in the United States.
Well, it's a false religion.
I don't disagree. Thank you, Donna. Appreciate you raising that. To the state of Indiana, Clarence, you're on the air.
Here we go here. Anyway, here, this first comment here by one of the young ladies here concerned is Obamacare. So here, it's no matter what that man does, and be honest with you, with any president, regardless whether that president is Democrat or Republican, okay, here, whatever that president does is only going to benefit about 60, maybe 70% of the people in this country. So you're always going to have someone out there that's not going to feel comfortable with what is done here. Everyone wants to seem to keep forgetting here. This man come into office and took over here behind a president here that basically is, for all practical purposes, literally bankrupt the world here with this war issue here.
Well, we got a break right here that we got to take here, Clarence. But when we come to bankrupting, there has been no one who has surpassed Barack Obama in spending in United States history. Nobody has surpassed the spending that he has done. And I'm just not comfortable with the fact that we're sanctioning the killing of unborn children in the womb. We have a break. We'll be right back.
For the Worldview Weekend Minute, I'm Brandon House. Our website is worldviewweekend.com. In August of 2010, Glenn Beck held his Restoring Honor rally in Washington, D.C. that included the unveiling of the Black Robe Regiment, a group of clergy from all religions, including imams, according to FoxNews.com. In the summer of 2011, it was his Restoring Courage rally in Israel that also had an ecumenical flair, I believe. And in the summer of 2012, it will be his next rally, Restoring Love. Will this Restoring Love rally be about embracing ecumenicalism and the social gospel? Will restoring love mean we are to set aside theological and doctrinal issues in order to win the culture war? I believe more and more Christians who refuse to compromise on what it means to be a Christian, who refuse to compromise on the gospel, who defend theological lines, are indeed going to be called unloving. But indeed, that's the most loving thing we can do.
This is Crosstalk on VCY America, and our call-in number here, I see how the lines are busy right now, 800-733-9829. You can pick up on the line here as soon as you hear a call terminated. We're going to continue on, though, by going to New Berlin, and Debbie, you're on the air.
Hi. Thank you for taking my call.
Mm-hmm.
I love to listen to your program. I just wanted to say a couple of things. My first comment is about our recall election here in Wisconsin.
Mm-hmm.
I just think it's terrible because it's costing us taxpayers millions of dollars. And basically how I feel is that the Democrats and the unions were furious because they didn't win, so they've been out on a witch hunt more or less to try and get Governor Walker out. And what about those of us who have voted and supported Governor Walker? What does that say about our votes? I mean, it just says, hey, we don't count. We're going to win no matter what. So let's just do this. And those of you that voted for Governor Walker, you're out the door. Your votes don't count.
Well, certainly, Debbie, I know there are many very frustrated by those who are seeking to nullify the past election. Legislators are talking, too, about needing to reform the laws in the state as it relates to the basis for recall taking place. But I believe it's tomorrow, the Wisconsin Government Accountability Board will be meeting, setting up the dates for the election, including a primary if one is necessary, which looks like that will be necessary. And you'll have the opportunity to go again and cast your vote. But certainly there are those who are trying to keep the state in total disarray. The accusations against conservative justices on the Wisconsin Supreme Court all are playing into this as well. And if we can keep a state of confusion and anger, it works to the benefit of those who are seeking to cause disruption to the state.
Yes, exactly.
Thank you.
And and then just real quick, my other comment is about where our country is headed.
Yeah.
And that is that, I think a lot of people, a lot of Christians thought, hey, our government, we were founded on Christian values and everything, and so we're safe. God isn't going to do anything to us and all of this and that. But now, with the direction that our country has taken since the 1960s and going against him and stuff, our country is no longer safe. And that type of thing. And what God has his plan, and what happens is going to happen. And I really feel that we're very close to his coming back again.
Yeah.
And what he has planned, no matter what we do, it's not going to stop his plan.
No, it won't. We don't stop God's plan, but certainly it behooves us as stewards to be found faithful. So be faithful to what God has called you to do, and remember that it is righteousness that exalts a nation, but sin is a reproach to any people. It's always right to do right.
Yes, and so we just have to keep doing what we know we have to do, what God wants us to do, and then keep praying for those that are lost.
Yeah.
But in the ultimate end, it's their decision.
Thank you, Debbie, for your call. We appreciate it.
Yep.
To New Hampshire. Steve, you're on the air.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify earlier, a gentleman on the president's slip-up there, that it wasn't addressed by anybody, but in fact it was addressed by Republican Speaker of the House John Boehner that very night. I don't think anything the president ever says or does passes, goes unnoticed, and it truly does get picked apart. And it's easy for us to play armchair quarterbacks and wish this happened or that happened. It just seems like self-centered people are there's so many of them nowadays, and I believe in a higher power, and I believe in living my life day to day and doing the next right thing, and I have to try to stay positive, and boy, it just seems like so many of the people in our country, the greatest country on the planet, are just going to such a negative side. And
our
country was founded on democratic values as well, and compromise is a major part of that.
Steve, we are a constitutional republic, and I want to take it a step further. It's more than just a higher power. That power is supreme, and it is God, the God of the universe, and He gave His Son, the Lord Jesus Christ, who shed His blood on the cross to save us from our sins, providing the means of salvation for us. And certainly it is not a world that is running without any guidance whatsoever. But as other callers have pointed out, God's plan is going to go forth. Thank you, Steve. Scott in Pennsylvania, you're on the air.
Hey, thanks for taking my call, Jim.
Yes.
I just wanted to comment. Last June, I was listening to your program about the Pepsi Cinemex tragedy that's going on at PepsiCo.
Mm-hmm.
And at the time, I was a Pepsi worker. I worked for them and had been for 6 years. I was a great worker for them. And, it didn't set well with my conscience. And, I laid a fleece before the Lord. I'm like, Lord, you don't want me to be in a company that does this kind of evil. Will you please help me find a different job? And sure enough, 2 weeks later, I was approached by a man who was in kind of a similar line of work, and he asked me, "Are you still interested in a job with my company, who I'd been waiting to get into for like 5 years?" And sure enough, within a month, I was working for a different company, a good, God-fearing, family-owned business, and I make the same amount of money. And I just want to put that out there as a challenge to all the Pepsi workers that are listening to your program right now, for them to really reconsider making that company another dime.
Scott, God bless you, and thank you for sharing that step of faith that you took in that regard.
Thank you. Thank you for your program, Jim. I appreciate everything you guys do.
Lord bless you.
You too.
Bye-bye now. Well, time is just seconds away from closing off here. I'm sorry, Bonnie, we're not going to be able to get to your call here today. But, folks, lots going on. Certainly, yes, behooves us to stay faithful. Yes, God's plan is going forward, and we need to be salt. We need to be light. Don't forget, in being light, if you'd like to share that DVD with others on Death Row, an evangelistic DVD, contact our switchboard here at 800-729-9829. Thanks for joining us today on Crosstalk.
You've been listening to Crosstalk via satellite and the internet from VCY America. Views expressed may or may not be those of this station. For a CD of today's program, send a donation of $6 or more to VCY Tape Ministry, 3434 West Kilbourne Avenue, Milwaukee, Wisconsin, 53208, or download by RSS or podcast from crosstalkamerica.com. And join us again for Crosstalk.